The rain hammered against the windows of our fifth-floor apartment, like it was trying to break through. Each droplet a tiny fist demanding entry. I stood in the kitchen, staring at my phone screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. The dating app notification glowed in the darkness. Someone had messaged me. Again, my heart pounded as footsteps approached from the hallway. I shoved the phone into my pocket just as Marcus walked in. His dark hair still damp from the gym, a towel draped around his neck. His gray t-shirt clung to his chest in a way that made my mouth go dry, and I immediately hated myself for noticing. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, opening the fridge and grabbing a bottle of water. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah, fine," I said, too quickly. "Just tired." Marcus had been my roommate for 8 months. 8 months of carefully constructed walls, strategic silences, and the constant, exhausting performance of being someone I wasn't. We'd met through a housing app when I'd moved to Seattle for my graphic design job. And what started as a convenient living arrangement had evolved into something uncomfortably close to friendship. Uncomfortably, because friendship meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant the possibility of him discovering what I'd spent years hiding. I was gay. And I was falling for my straight roommate. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was such a cliché that I'd avoided thinking about it for months. But denial only worked until it didn't. And lately, it had been failing me spectacularly. Every shared meal, every movie night, sprawled on our second-hand couch, every accidental brush of hands reaching for the same coffee mugget, all added up to a feeling I couldn't ignore anymore. "Earth 2, Jamie," Marcus said, waving a hand in front of my face. His brown eyes crinkled with amusement. "Seriously, dude, you've been weird all week. What's going on?" "Nothing," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just work stuff. The Henderson campaign is killing me." He studied me for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. Marcus was observant to observant sometimes. It was one of the things that made him good at his job as a social worker. But right now, it made him dangerous to be around. "You know you can talk to me, right?" he said softly. "About anything." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. If only he knew how much I wanted to. If only I could tell him that the reason I'd been distant wasn't work stress or seasonal depression or any of the other excuses I'd manufactured. It was because every time he smiled at me, I felt my carefully constructed defenses crumbling a little more. "I know," I said. "Thanks, man." He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and headed toward his room. I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. This couldn't go on much longer. Something was going to break either my resolve or my sanity. The next morning arrived gray and sullen. Seattle doing its best impression of perpetual November, even though it was March. I'd barely slept. My mind replaying every interaction Marcus and I had ever had. Searching for signs I might have given myself away. I'd been so careful. I never brought anyone home. I kept my dating apps locked with fingerprint recognition. I talked about women when the conversation demanded it, sprinkling in just enough heterosexuality to pass without arousing suspicion. It was exhausting, but it was safe. Growing up in a conservative small town in Idaho had taught me that safety came through invisibility. My parents had never been overtly hateful, but they'd made their views clear enough through pointed comments about neighbors, through the way they'd turned off the TV when certain news stories came on, through the very specific prayers they'd offered at dinner. I'd learned early that being different meant being alone. So, I'd learned to hide. Coming out in college had been liberating at first, finally being able to breathe, to exist without the constant performance. But then I'd graduated and entered the real world, where jobs and leases and professional reputations hung in a delicate balance. I'd found that being visible came with its own costs. It was easier to compartmentalize, to keep my personal life private, to maintain the careful distance that kept me safe. But Marcus was making that impossible. I was pouring my second cup of coffee when he emerged from his room. Already dressed for work in dark jeans and a navy button-down that made him look unfairly professional, he moved through the kitchen with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, and I felt a pang of envy mixed with longing. "Big day?" I asked, attempting normalcy. "Case review," he said, grimacing. "The foster placement I've been working on for months." I think we're finally getting somewhere, but you never know with the system. This was Marcus in his element, passionate, dedicated, genuinely caring about making the world better. It was one of the many things that had drawn me to him, watching him come home frustrated but never defeated, always ready to fight another day for kids who had no one else. "You'll get it done," I said. "You always do." He flashed me a grateful smile, and something in my chest twisted painfully. "Thanks, Jamie. Hey, you want to grab dinner tonight? There's that new Thai place on Pike that's supposed to be amazing." My heart lurched. Dinner. Just the two of us again. "I might have to work late," I said, a lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Disappointment, maybe, or confusion. "Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem." He grabbed his keys and headed for the door, pausing in the doorway. "You know, if I've done something to upset you, you'd tell me, right?" "What?" "No, Marcus, you haven't, because you've been pulling away for weeks, and I can't figure out why. I thought we were friends." The hurt in his voice was genuine, and it cut deeper than any anger would have. I wanted to tell him the truth, that it wasn't him, it was me. Drowning in feelings I couldn't express and didn't know how to handle. But the words stuck in my throat, heavy and impossible. "We are friends," I managed. "I'm just going through some stuff. It's not about you." He nodded slowly, not looking entirely convinced. "All right. Well, I'm here if you need me. You know that, right?" "Yeah, I know." After he left, I sank onto the couch and put my head in my hands. This was getting out of control. I was hurting him by pushing him away, but the alternative, letting him get closer, risking him discovering the truth, felt impossibly terrifying. I pulled out my phone and opened the dating app I'd been ignoring for weeks. Maybe if I focused on meeting someone else, someone safe and available, I could redirect these feelings. It was healthier than pining after someone I could never have. But as I scrolled through profiles, none of them sparked even a fraction of what I felt when Marcus walked into a room. I was in trouble. Deep, complicated, heartbreaking trouble. The week crawled by in a haze of avoidance and guilt. I took on extra freelance projects, stayed late at coffee shops, did anything to minimize the time I spent at the apartment. When I was there, I kept to my room, headphones on, pretending to be immersed in work. Marcus didn't push, but I could feel his concern growing. He left post-it notes on the fridge, made extra pasta. "Help yourself, and hope your day doesn't suck too much." Each one was a tiny dagger of kindness that made everything worse. On Friday evening, I came home to find him in the living room with two of his friends from work, Sarah and Dev, watching a basketball game. They were laughing at something on the screen, beers in hand, the picture of easy camaraderie. "Jamie," Sarah called out when she spotted me, "come join us. We're about to order pizza." I hesitated in the doorway, caught between the desire to retreat to my room and the social obligation to be polite. "He's busy," Marcus said quietly, not looking at me. "Always busy these days." The edge in his voice was new, and it stung. "Psh," I heard myself say. "Pizza sounds great." I spent the next 2 hours perched on the edge of the couch, nursing a beer I barely drank, trying to participate in conversations about the game and office politics, and Sarah's disastrous Tinder date. It should have been relaxing, normal. I felt like I was performing in a play where I'd never learned my lines. Marcus was subdued, his usual warmth replaced by something more guarded. When our eyes met, I saw questions there that I couldn't answer. After Sarah and Dev left, we cleaned up in silence, moving around each other with practiced efficiency. The tension was suffocating. "Thanks for hanging out," Marcus said finally, loading the dishwasher. "I know you're busy, Marcus." "It's fine, Jamie. You don't owe me an explanation." But the way he said it made it clear that an explanation was exactly what he wanted, what he deserved. I stood there, dish towel in hand, watching him work, and felt something crack inside me. He was such a good person, kind, patient, genuine, in ways that felt rare in the world. He deserved honesty, even if the truth complicated everything. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to face me, and I saw hope flicker across his features. "Okay," my mouth went dry. This was at the moment where everything would change, one way or another. I could keep lying, keep hiding, keep suffocating under the weight of my own secrets, or I could trust that maybe, just maybe, the risk was worth it. I've been pulling away because... I swallowed hard. Because I'm scared. Scared of what? Of losing you as a friend? Of making things weird. I took a breath, forcing myself to meet his eyes. Marcus, I'm gay. The words hung in the air between us, 3 syllables that contained years of fear and shame and desperate hope. I watched his face, searching for any sign of disgust or anger or rejection, bracing myself for the worst. Instead, his expression softened into something I couldn't quite read. "Okay," he said slowly. "Thank you for telling me, okay?" I repeated, disbelieving. "That's it? Just okay? What did you expect? Did you think I'd kick you out? That we couldn't be friends anymore? I don't know, maybe people react differently, and Jamie." He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "I'm not people. I'm your friend. This doesn't change that." Relief flooded through me so intensely that my knees felt weak. But it was tangled up with something else, something more complicated. Because there was still more to say, the part that would actually change things. "There's more," I said, and his eyebrows rose. "More?" This was the cliff edge. Once I stepped off, there was no going back. The reason I've been distant isn't just because I was scared to come out. It's because I closed my eyes, unable to look at him while I said it. It's because I have feelings for you. Real feelings. And I know you're straight, and I know it's completely inappropriate since we live together, but I couldn't keep pretending anymore. It was killing me. The silence that followed was deafening. I opened my eyes to find Marcus staring at me, his expression unreadable. The seconds stretched into eternity. "You have feelings for me?" he repeated. "Not a question?" "Yes. How long?" "I don't know. Months, maybe." I tried to ignore it. I really did. I never meant for this to happen. He ran a hand through his hair, looking stunned. I need a minute to process this. Of course. I understand. "I'll go to my room." "No." His hand shot out, catching my wrist. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. "Stay. Just give me a second." I stayed rooted to the spot, barely breathing, while he worked through whatever was happening in his head. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I need to tell you something too," he said, "and this might surprise you." "What?" He met my eyes, and what I saw there made my heart stop. "I'm not as straight as you think I am." Part 2. The truth between us, the world tilted on its axis. I stared at Marcus, certain I'd misheard, that my desperate imagination had conjured words that weren't actually there. "What?" I whispered. He let go of my wrist but didn't step back. And suddenly the kitchen felt impossibly small, the air charged with something electric and terrifying. "I've been questioning things," Marcus said, his voice careful, measured, "for a while now. Maybe longer than I've been willing to admit to myself." "Questioning? What things?" "My sexuality, my attraction, what I want." He laughed, but it sounded strained. "God, I've been driving myself crazy trying to figure it out. I thought maybe I was bi or pan, or just ... confused. But the one thing I kept coming back to was..." He stopped, swallowing hard. "Was what?" I prompted, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Was you." The admission hung between us, fragile and profound. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. Me? I managed. "You, Jamie. I know how that sounds, believe me. I've tried to tell myself it was just because we're close, because you're a good guy and I admire you. But it's more than that. When you started pulling away, it felt like losing something important. Something I wasn't ready to lose." I shook my head, trying to make sense of this impossible turn of events. "But you've always dated women. You've never..." "I know. And those relationships were real. They mattered. But they never quite fit right, you know? There was always something missing, some piece I couldn't identify. And then I moved in here, and we became friends, and I started noticing things." "What things?" He took a step closer, and I could smell his cologne, something woody and warm that I'd become far too familiar with. The way my day felt better when I knew you'd be home? How I'd find excuses to spend time with you? How I started comparing other people to you, and they all came up short? He paused, vulnerability written across his features. How I'd catch myself staring at you when you weren't looking. My brain struggled to catch up with what was happening. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life. They happened in movies, in stories, in the fantasies I'd played out in my head late at night when I couldn't sleep. Why didn't you say anything? I asked because I didn't know what I was feeling until recently. Because I was scared. Because he laughed again, this time with genuine amusement. Because I thought you were straight. You thought I was straight? I said incredulously. How? You never brought anyone home. You never talked about dating. You were so private about everything. I just assumed you were straight and maybe dealing with a breakup or something. I never imagined you might be gay because you hid it so well. The irony was almost painful. We'd both been hiding, both been afraid, both been convinced the other was unattainable. So what now? I asked, my voice trembling. Marcus reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing against my skin, in a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. Now he said softly, we figure this out together. If you want to, if I want to. Marcus, I've wanted nothing else for months. His smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. Yeah. We stood there, inches apart, the moment stretching into something sacred. His eyes dropped to my lips, and I saw the question there. The uncertainty, mixed with desire. I've never kissed a guy before, he admitted, his voice barely audible. You don't have to rush, I said. Even though every cell in my body was screaming for him to close the distance between us. I know, but I want to. I've wanted to for weeks. I just didn't know how to tell you. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to stop this, to pull back, to protect us both from the potential fallout. But I didn't want protection anymore. I wanted him with a fierceness that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. When his lips met mine, it was soft, tentative, questioning. But then something shifted, and the kiss deepened, becoming more confident, more certain. His hand slid into my hair, pulling me closer, and I gasped against his mouth. Overwhelmed by sensation, he tasted like beer and possibility, and everything I'd been denying myself. The kiss was unpracticed but genuine, full of nervous energy and desperate hope. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were wide with wonder. Wow, he breathed. Yeah, I agreed, my voice shaky. Wow. We stood there, foreheads pressed together, processing what had just happened. The weight of months of longing and confusion had transformed into something lighter, something that felt suspiciously like joy. I can't believe this is real, I said. Me neither. I keep expecting to wake up and find out I imagined the whole thing. If this is a dream, don't wake me up, he laughed, and the sound was music. Deal. But reality crept back in slowly, bringing questions and complications with it. We migrated to the couch, sitting close but not quite touching, both of us trying to navigate this new territory. So, Marcus said, I should probably mention that I have no idea what I'm doing here. This is all completely new to me. It makes two of us, I said. I mean, I've been out for years, but I've never been in a situation like this, where my roommate, who I thought was straight, turns out to maybe have feelings for me too. Definitely have feelings, he corrected. There's no maybe about it. The certainty in his voice made warmth bloom in my chest. Okay, definitely feelings. But where do we go from here? We live together. We share a lease. We have mutual friends. If this doesn't work out, hey, he reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. Let's not catastrophize before we've even started. Yes, the situation is complicated. But maybe complicated is okay if it's with the right person. Is that what you think I am? The right person? I don't know yet, he said honestly. But I want to find out. Don't you? I looked at our joined hands, at the way his thumb was tracing absent patterns on my skin, at the hope and uncertainty in his eyes. This was risky, possibly the most emotionally dangerous thing I'd ever considered. But it was also real and raw and right there in front of me. Yes, I said. I want to find out. We talked until nearly 3 in the morning, curled up on opposite ends of the couch with our legs tangled together in the middle. Marcus asked questions about when I'd known I was gay, about coming out, about the dating app I'd thought I'd hidden so well. I asked about his journey, about the moments that had made him question about what he was feeling now. "I think I've been attracted to guys for a long time," he admitted. "I just didn't have the framework to understand it. Growing up, there was this kid in my high school, Daniel. He was on the swim team, and I used to find excuses to hang around the pool after practice. I told myself I was there to shoot hoops on the outdoor court, but really I was watching him. I convinced myself I was admiring his swimming technique, or that I wanted to be friends, but looking back, you were attracted to him. Yeah, but I couldn't admit that to myself. It was easier to date girls, to follow the expected path, and it wasn't fake. I was genuinely attracted to them. But there was always this other current running underneath, this awareness of guys that I kept pushing down. I understood that better than he knew. The mental gymnastics required to repress attraction to redirect it into acceptable channels. To maintain the careful fiction that you were exactly who everyone expected you to be. When did you start to really question?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Honestly? About 2 months after we moved in together. We were watching a movie, some action thing, and you made a comment about how the fight choreography was really well done. But the way you said it, there was this appreciation in your voice, and I realized I was watching you instead of the movie. And I thought, why am I more interested in Jamie's reaction than what's on screen? And that scared you? Terrified me. Because once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing. The way you laugh when something genuinely surprises you. How you bite your lip when you're concentrating on design work. The way you move around the kitchen in the morning before you've had coffee. It all became ... significant. Hearing him describe noticing me the way I'd been noticing him felt surreal. All those moments I thought were one-sided. All those glances I thought I'd hidden, maybe they hadn't been as invisible as I'd believed. I did the same thing, I confessed. Watched you when you weren't looking. Made excuses to be in the same room. Memorized the little things about you. Like what? Like how you always put on music when you're stressed. How you crack your knuckles before starting paperwork. The way you tilt your head when you're really listening to someone. How you always save the last bite of whatever you're eating because you like to end on a good note. He smiled, something soft and vulnerable in his expression. You noticed all that? I noticed everything. It was kind of torture, actually. Tell me about it. I've been losing my mind trying to figure out if what I was feeling was real or if I was just confused about boundaries and friendship. And what do you think now? He shifted closer, until our shoulders were touching. I think this is real. Scary and complicated, but real. The weight of his admission settled over us, comfortable and right. We sat in the quiet for a while. The city sounds from outside filtering through the window's distant sirens, the hiss of rain on pavement, the occasional car passing by. Can I ask you something? Marcus said eventually. Anything. What made you decide to tell me tonight? You'd been hiding it for so long? I considered the question, trying to identify the exact moment when the cost of hiding had finally exceeded the cost of honesty. I was hurting you, I said simply, by pulling away, by being distant. You deserved better than that. And I realized that even if you rejected me, even if everything became awkward and terrible, at least I'd have been honest. At least I'd have given you the truth instead of half versions of myself. I'm glad you did. Tell me, Me too. Even though I was convinced it was going to blow up in my face. I'm not going to lie, Marcus said. This is going to be an adjustment for me. I'm still figuring out my sexuality. Still learning what all of this means. I might need time. Might need to take things slow. It's completely fair. There's no rush. But I want you to know that I'm committed to figuring this out. To seeing where this goes. The promise in his words made something tight in my chest finally relax. This wasn't going to be simple or straightforward, but it was possible. We were possible. We should probably sleep, I said reluctantly, noting the time on my phone. Yeah, big day tomorrow. He paused. Well, technically today, we stood, stretching stiff muscles, reluctant to break the spell that had settled over the night. At the hallway where we'd normally split off to our respective rooms, Marcus hesitated. Hey, Jamie. Yeah. Can I kiss you goodnight? My heart did something complicated in my chest. Always. This kiss was different from the first, less urgent, more tender. A promise, rather than a question. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Sweet dreams, he whispered. You too. Lay in bed for a long time after. Staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment, every word, every touch. The fear that had dominated my life for months had transformed into something else, not quite hope yet, but maybe its cousin. Possibility. My phone buzzed with a text. Marcus, thanks for being brave enough to tell me. Sleep well. I smiled in the darkness and typed back, thanks for being brave enough to hear me. You too. Tomorrow would bring new complications, new questions, new challenges. But for now, in this quiet moment, I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I let myself feel happy. Sunlight filtered through my curtains. Way too bright for someone who'd only slept for hours. I lay there for a moment, wondering if last night had been real or an elaborate dream my sleep-deprived brain had constructed. Then my phone buzzed. It's morning. Coffee's brewing. Made extra. Real. It was real. I got up, threw on sweatpants and a t-shirt, and headed to the kitchen with a mix of anticipation and nervousness swirling in my stomach. What was the protocol here? Did we pretend everything was normal? Did we talk about it? Marcus was at the counter, measuring coffee grounds, wearing flannel pajama pants and a worn t-shirt from his college. He looked up when I entered, and his smile was tentative but genuine. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a moment, the awkwardness palpable, until Marcus started laughing. This is weird, right? Said. We're being weird. So weird, I agreed, feeling some of the tension dissolve. Come here. I crossed to him, and he pulled me into a hug, solid, warm, comfortable. We stood like that for a moment, just breathing, until the coffee maker beeped and broke the spell, so Marcus said, pouring to mugs. I did a lot of thinking after we said goodnight. My stomach tightened. Good thinking or bad thinking? Good, mostly. Complicated, but good. He handed me a mug, our fingers brushing in the exchange. I want to try this sus, but I think we need to be smart about it. Okay, what does smart look like? We moved to the living room, settling into what had become our usual spots on the couch. Except now, there was awareness between us that hadn't existed before. First, Marcus said, I need to be honest about where I am in my journey. I'm not out. I haven't told anyone I'm questioning my sexuality. Coming to terms with this is going to take time. I understand. There's no pressure to come out before you're ready.
Thanks.
And second, I think we should take this slow. Not because I don't care about you, but because I want to do this right. I don't want to rush into something and risk ruining what we have. That makes sense? What does slow mean to you? He considered. Dating, I guess? Getting to know each other in this new context? Figuring out what a relationship between us would look like. A living together, I pointed out. A living together, he agreed with a wry smile, which definitely complicates things. But maybe we can use that to our advantage? We already know each other's worst habits. There are no surprises about whose turn it is to take out the trash. I laughed. True. Although now your habit of leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor might be less endearing and more relationship-ending. Hey, I'm getting better about that. You're really not. The easy banter felt good, familiar. Maybe this could work. Maybe we could navigate the transition from roommates to something more without losing what made our friendship special. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his tone more serious. I think we should keep this private for now. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I need time to figure things out without external pressure. Is that okay? A small part of me winced the part that had spent years hiding, that was tired of being a secret. But I understood his position. Coming out was a personal journey, and he deserved to move at his own pace. As long as it's not indefinite, I said carefully. I've done the hiding thing, and it takes a toll. I know. And I promise, this isn't about hiding you. It's about giving myself space to process. A few months, maybe? Just until I'm more sure of myself. Okay, a few months. But Marcus, you have to promise me that if this gets too hard, if the secrecy becomes toxic, you'll tell me. I won't be anyone's dirty secret. You're not a secret. You're someone I care about, and I want to respect what we're building by not rushing it. He reached for my hand. Does that make sense? It did, even if it wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear. But relationships were about compromise, about meeting each other where you were. Yeah, I said. It makes sense. The next few weeks were a study in contradictions, exhilarating and terrifying. Simple and complicated, public and private all at once, in front of others. We were the same as always, roommates, friends, nothing more. But alone in our apartment, we were discovering each other in new ways. Stolen kisses in the kitchen. Hands brushing as we passed in the hallway. Falling asleep together on the couch during movie nights. Marcus's head on my shoulder. He was tentative at first, clearly working through years of conditioning and expectation. Sometimes he'd pull back, needing space to process. Other times he'd initiate contact with a confidence that surprised us both. Is this okay? Became his most common question, asked before every kiss, every touch, every moment of vulnerability. This was always my answer. Because it was more than okay, it was everything. We went on dates, though calling them that felt almost absurd given that we lived together. Dinner at restaurants across town, where we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. Long walks through Discovery Park. Late-night conversations in his room that stretched until dawn. I learned new things about him, how he hummed under his breath when he was content. How he overthought everything until he'd talked himself in circles. How he gave the best hugs, but only to people he really trusted. He learned about me too, about my family history, my complicated relationship with my hometown, my dreams of someday starting my own design firm. But we also faced challenges. Like the time Sarah showed up unexpectedly and almost caught us kissing in the kitchen. Or when Marcus's sister called and asked if he was seeing anyone, and I had to listen to him deflect and change the subject. Small moments that reminded me we were still navigating uncertain territory one evening. About a month into whatever we were calling this, we were cooking dinner together, a routine we developed where I chopped vegetables and Marcus handled anything involving heat. Since my cooking skills were questionable at best, my parents want to visit next month, Marcus said casually, stirring pasta sauce. I nearly dropped the knife. Oh yeah, they're coming through Seattle on their way to visit my sister in Vancouver. They want to stay here for a few days. Implications hung in the air. His parents. Here? While we were. Whatever we were, what did you tell them? I asked. That it would be great to see them. What else could I say? Marcus, I know. He set down the spoon and turned to face me. I know this complicates things. But they're my parents, Jamie. I can't tell them not to come. I'm not asking you to. We'll have to be careful. Something flickered across his face, frustration maybe, or guilt. I hate that word, careful. Like what we have is something dangerous, isn't it though? If we get caught, if your parents see something, then what? He challenged. What's the worst that happens? They could react badly. You could get hurt. We could lose. I stopped, not wanting to voice the fear that had been lurking in the back of my mind since we'd started this. We could lose what we have, Marcus finished softly. I know, but Jamie, living in fear of what might happen isn't living at all. I've been doing that my whole life, and I'm tired of it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shift that had been happening gradually over the past month. He was more confident, more settled in himself. Still figuring things out, but no longer paralyzed by uncertainty. When did you get so brave? I asked. I learned from someone pretty amazing, he said, pulling me close. Someone who risked everything to tell me the truth. Marcus's parents arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, his mother immediately critiquing the state of our apartment, while his father settled into the armchair like he owned the place. Margaret and Tom Reeves were exactly as Marcus had described them, well-meaning, slightly overbearing, with firm opinions about everything from politics to the proper way to fold towels. You must be Jamie, Margaret said, giving me a once-over that felt uncomfortably thorough. Marcus has told us so much about you. All good things, I hope, I said, shaking her hand. He says you're a wonderful roommate. Very responsible. That's important in this city. It is so expensive, you need someone reliable. I smiled and nodded, slipping into the performance I knew so well. Friendly but not too friendly. Warm but maintaining distance. The perfect straight roommate. It was exhausting that evening. We all went to dinner at a seafood restaurant on the waterfront. I sat across from Marcus, acutely aware of every glance, every word, every gesture. His parents asked me questions about my job, my family, my plans for the future. Standard parent interrogation, but it felt loaded with subtext only Marcus and I could hear. "So, Jamie," Tom said, leaning back in his chair, "you seeing anyone special?" I felt Marcus tense beside me. "Not at the moment," I said lightly. "Work keeps me pretty busy." "You should let Marcus set you up," Margaret suggested. "He knows lots of lovely young women from work." "Mom," Marcus said, a warning in his voice. "What?" "I'm just saying a nice young man like Jamie shouldn't be alone." "Marcus, what about that girl from your office? The one with the red hair?" "I don't think Jamie needs help with his love life, Mom." Conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I spent the rest of dinner feeling like a fraud, participating in a charade that made my skin crawl. This was what I'd escaped from the constant monitoring. The well-meaning attempts to fit me into a box I'd never belong in. The exhausting performance of heterosexuality. Back at the apartment, Marcus's parents settled into his room while he took the couch, and I retreated to mine. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in. A soft knock on my door. "Jamie, you awake?" "Yeah." Marcus slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. In the dim light from my window, I could see the apology written on his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, sitting on the edge of my bed. "About dinner? About my mom's comments? About all of it. It's not your fault, isn't it, though? I'm the one who asked you to hide, who wanted to keep this secret." "Marcus, no, listen. Watching you tonight, seeing you shrink back into that closet you worked so hard to escape. I hated it, Jamie. I hated being the reason you had to pretend." I sat up, reaching for his hand in the darkness. "We agreed to take this slow, to keep it private while you figured things out. I know what we agreed, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe hiding is worse than the alternative." "What are you saying?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm saying that I'm falling for you. Really falling. And I don't want to keep pretending that you're just my roommate when you're so much more than that." My heart stuttered. "You're falling for me?" "Yeah. Is that okay?" I laughed softly, the sound catching in my throat. "Marcus, I've been falling for you since the day you helped me carry groceries up 5 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken. That was like our second week living together." "I know." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine. "So what do we do? My parents are here for 3 more days. I can keep up the act if that's what you need." "What I need," I said carefully, "is for you to be sure. Coming out to your parents is huge. You can't do it because you feel guilty or because dinner was awkward. You have to do it because you're ready. What if I'm never completely ready? What if I keep waiting for the perfect moment and it never comes? Then you make the moment. But Marcus, whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want to wait, we wait. If you want to tell them, I'll be right there beside you." He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. I should have said it sooner, but I was scared. But I'm not anymore. "I love you, Jamie." His tears pricked at my eyes. "I love you too." The next day unfolded with careful normalcy. Marcus took his parents sightseeing while I worked from home, grateful for the space to breathe. But that evening, Marcus texted me, "Can you come to Pike Place? Need you here?" My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. I found them at a coffee shop overlooking the water. Marcus, his parents, an attention so thick I could feel it from across the room. When Marcus saw me, relief flooded his features. "Jamie, thanks for coming." He stood, and before I could process what was happening, he reached for my hand. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something, and I need Jamie here for it." Margaret's eyes dropped to our joined hands, understanding dawning slowly. Tom's expression was harder to read. "Marcus," his mother said carefully, What is this? This is me being honest. Finally, it squeezed my hand. Jamie isn't just my roommate. He's my boyfriend. And I'm still figuring out all the labels, but I know that I'm not straight. I'm attracted to men, to him specifically, and I love him. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Margaret's face cycle through shock, confusion, denial, and finally settling on something that looked like grief. How long? She asked quietly. We've been together about 6 weeks, but I've been questioning my sexuality for over a year. You didn't think to tell us? Tom's voice was sharp. You let us come here, meet your roommate, and all this time I didn't know how, Marcus said, and I heard the tremble in his voice. I was scared of how you'd react, of losing you. You're not going to lose us, Margaret said, but her voice lacked conviction. We need time to process this, Marcus. You can't drop something like this on us and expect us to be okay with it immediately. I know. And I'm not asking you to be okay with it right now, but I am asking you to try. Because Jamie is important to me. This is important to me. Tom stood abruptly. I need some air. He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Margaret sitting there, tears streaming down her face. Marcus looked shattered, caught between going after his father and staying with his mother. Go, I said softly. I'll stay with her. He hesitated, then nodded and followed his father outside. Margaret and I sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment before she spoke. Did you do this to him? Excuse me? Turn him gay. Seduce him. Whatever you want to call it. I felt anger flash through me, hot and sharp. That's not how it works, Mrs. Reeves. Marcus is figuring out his sexuality because that's his journey to take. I didn't turn him into anything. He's discovering who he's always been. He was fine before he met you. He dated women. He was normal. So with all due respect, he wasn't fine. He was hiding. From himself and from you. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the fear beneath her anger. I don't want this life for him. The discrimination, the judgment, the difficulty. He could have had an easier path, maybe I said. But it wouldn't have been his path. And trust me, living a lie is harder than facing the truth. I know, I did it for years. The weight of pretending, of hiding who you are, it destroys you from the inside. Marcus deserves better than that. And you think you're what's better for him? I think I'm someone who loves him exactly as he is, who won't ask him to be anyone other than himself. Can you say the same? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. Before Margaret could answer, Marcus and his father returned. Tom looked pale but composed. Marcus cautiously hopeful. We should go back to the apartment, Tom said. We need to talk. All of us. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest I'd ever been part of. Sitting in our living room, watching Marcus navigate between his parents' hurt and confusion and his own need to be authentic. I saw the full weight of what coming out meant. Tom asked questions, some insensitive, some genuinely curious. Margaret cried intermittently. Marcus held firm, explaining his journey with patience I didn't know he possessed. And I sat beside him, offering silent support, occasionally squeezing his hand when things got particularly difficult. I need you to understand, Marcus said at one point, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't choose this to hurt you. I didn't choose it at all. But I am choosing to be honest. I'm choosing to live authentically, even if it's hard. Because the alternative, pretending, hiding, slowly suffocating under the weight of expectations, that's not living. That's just surviving. But what about children? Margaret asked. A family. I can still have those things, Mom. Just maybe not the way you imagined in your career. What if people, then they're people I don't want in my life anyway? He looked at me, his eyes shining. I found someone who sees me, really sees me, and doesn't ask me to be anything other than who I am. That's worth fighting for. That's worth the risk. By the time the sun set, nothing was resolved. But there was a tentative understanding, a willingness to try. Tom and Margaret left to stay at a hotel needing space to process, they said. Marcus walked them out, and I heard the murmured conversation in the hallway, the tearful goodbyes when he came back inside. He looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. You did it, I said. Did it. He collapsed onto the couch beside me. God, that was terrifying. How do you feel? Like I just ran a marathon. Like I can finally breathe. Like everything and nothing has changed. Turned to look at me. Thank you for being there. I couldn't have done that without you. You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. We sat in silence for a while, processing the magnitude of what had happened. Eventually, Marcus spoke again. My dad pulled me aside when we were outside. He said he needed time, but he also said he loved me, that no matter what, I'm still his son. That's good, right? Yeah, it's more than I hoped for, honestly. I know they're struggling, but at least they're trying. It's all you can ask for. He pulled me close, resting his head on my shoulder. I meant what I said in there. About you being worth the risk. You are, Jamie. You're worth everything. The weeks that followed were a study in adjustment. Marcus's parents called regularly, conversations that were sometimes stilted but always sincere. They were trying, in their own way, to understand. Margaret sent Marcus's articles about LGBTQ rights and resources for parents, which felt like progress. Tom was quieter, but present, asking careful questions about our relationship. We started being more open with friends. Marcus told Sarah and Dev, who were surprised but supportive. I came out to my coworkers, something I'd been avoiding for years. With each person we told, with each small act of honesty, the weight I'd been carrying grew lighter. But the biggest change was in us. No more hiding, no more carefully maintained distance. We were a couple messy and complicated and figuring things out as we went. But genuinely, authentically together. One Saturday morning, 3 months after that fateful night when everything changed, I woke up to find Marcus in the kitchen making pancakes. He was dancing to music only he could hear, spatula in hand, completely unself-conscious in his joy. Good morning, I said, leaning against the doorframe. He turned, his face lighting up. Morning. I'm making your favorite blueberry pancakes with way too much syrup. You know me so well. I've been studying you for almost a year now. Crossed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. And what have you learned? That you're grumpy before coffee. That you hum when you're concentrating. That you have 17 different smiles, and I'm determined to catalog them all. He turned in my arms, pressing a quick kiss to my lips. That I'm incredibly lucky to have found you. I'm the lucky one. Let's say we're both lucky and leave it at that. We ate breakfast on the couch, plates balanced on our knees, arguing about what to watch, my vote for a documentary, his for a comedy. It was domestic and mundane and absolutely perfect. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. We'd had a long, difficult conversation a few weeks ago when I'd finally told her about Marcus. Her response had been complicated, not acceptance. Not quite rejection, but something in between. But she was trying, and that was enough for now. Thinking about you today, sweetheart. Hope you're well. Small words, but they meant everything. Progress wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just a text message, an olive branch extended across years of silence. Everything okay? Marcus asked, noticing my expression. Yeah, just my mom. Being less terrible than usual, he smiled. That's good. That's really good, Jamie. We spent the rest of the day doing nothing, in particular cleaning the apartment, grocery shopping, watching movies. The kind of ordinary, beautiful domesticity that I'd dreamed about, but never quite believed I'd find. That evening, as we were making dinner together, our routine now well established, Marcus suddenly set down his knife and turned to me. Move in with me. Marcus, I already live with you. No, I mean really, move in with me. Not as roommates sharing an apartment, but as partners. We could get a new place, something that's ours together. Or we could stay here and make it officially ours. But I want to stop living like we're just cohabitating and start living like we're building a life together. My heart swelled. You're serious? Completely. I know it's only been a few months, but when you know, you know. And I know that I want to wake up next to you every day. I want to build something real with you. Something lasting. I kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and hope into it. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He laughed, pulling me closer. You're stuck with me now. You know that? I'm counting on it. 6 months later, we stood in the living room of our new apartment, not far from the old one, but somehow entirely different. Bigger, brighter, with space for both of us to work and live and dream. The moving boxes were still half unpacked, furniture arranged haphazardly, but it was home. "I can't believe we did this," Marcus said, surveying the chaos with satisfaction. "Which part? Moving in together, coming out, or convincing your parents that I'm not corrupting their son?" "All of it." He pulled me into his arms, swaying slightly even though there was no music playing. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this. I was so lost, so confused about who I was and what I wanted. And now, and now. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. Rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in the moment. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears and arguments, difficult conversations, and painful adjustments. My family was still learning to accept us. His parents were making progress but still struggled sometimes. We'd faced judgment and questions and the casual homophobia that seemed to lurk in unexpected places. But we'd also found joy in the little things: holding hands in public, kissing goodbye without looking over our shoulders, introducing each other as partners instead of roommates. In the big things: standing up for ourselves, refusing to hide, building a life that was authentically ours. "Hey, Marcus," said softly. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking about everything that had to happen to get us here. All the fear I had to overcome, to tell you the truth. All the courage it took for you to accept yourself." "Best risk I ever took," he said. "Same." We stood there in our new apartment, surrounded by boxes and possibilities, and I felt something I'd been chasing my entire life finally settle into place. Not just happiness, though. There was plenty of that, but belonging. The deep, bone-level certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with someone who saw me completely and loved me anyway. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Housewarming party this weekend? We'll bring wine and terrible opinions about your decorating choices." I showed it to Marcus, and he laughed. "Tell her yes. Tell her to bring everyone. I want to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" "Everything. Us, this place. The fact that we survived and found each other and built something beautiful out of all that fear and uncertainty." He kissed my forehead. "The fact that you were brave enough to tell your straight roommate you loved him, and I was brave enough to realize I loved him back." I sent the text to Sarah, then tossed my phone onto the couch and pulled Marcus closer. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "This is just the beginning. We have so much ahead of us, so many mornings and nights and mundane moments and extraordinary ones. So many chances to keep choosing each other." "I can't wait," he said. Neither could I. We kissed in the middle of our new living room, surrounded by the beautiful mess of a life we were building together. Outside, the city hummed with life, thousands of stories unfolding, thousands of people finding their way home, and inside, in this small apartment in Seattle, two people who'd found each other, against all odds, held on tight, and didn't let go, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth. And sometimes, if you're incredibly lucky, the truth sets you free. Sometimes it even brings you love.